Hey everybody, we're back. No preview show this week, but we couldn't miss the opportunity to come on and have a little chit chat about. I'll tell you specifically what we're going to have a chit chat about. We're going to take a closer look at the heavyweight division, at the light heavyweight division, and also at the flyweight division. So we're going to take a look at the smaller guys and then go and take a look at the bigger guys too. And I think we'll start from the bottom up as things are progressing in 2023. We have a new kind of undisputed flyweight champion that was crowned this past weekend. Same situation in the light heavyweight division with Jamal Hill getting crowned the light heavyweight champion this past weekend. And also we have a heavyweight title fight to look forward to, where we will see a heavyweight champion again crowned after Francis Ngannou left the UFC, was stripped of the title, with John Jones and Cyril Gane competing for the heavyweight strap. So guys, how are you today? Thanks for joining me. We said we'd have the chance to fill up the Thursday slot. We were going to take a week off. You know, we have a 9-week run of UFC events coming on from next week on, but why not? Why the fuck not come on here and have a chat? There's lots of exciting things happening in the world of mixed martial arts right now, and business is a booming really in the UFC, outside the UFC, and all things MMA. How are you today? What's the crack?
I think this shows the fact that we could have had a week off, right? We could have had one. I could be in bed right now. I could be hanging out with my fiance. Instead, I am a fucking MMA scumbag. And here I am talking to my two favorites, fresh trim, Pepsi on tap, ready to fucking go.
I'm feeling a little left out today. I'm the only one of the three of us that didn't get a fresh cup, but you know what? We got caught in the hot. But hopefully I can keep the old hairdo in check for the rest of it. Spencer, you also got a chop today.
I got a chop a little earlier in the week. I wanted to make sure that by Wednesday everything was settled down. It was all in place properly. You know, the day you get it cut and the next day, it's still a little rough. It's still coming down, especially when you got to do the fades and do the razors as much as we get done. So we're in shape. The biggest one now is just making sure I get the beard cleaned up.
And it's a tough one in Canada though, Spencer. Maybe not so much where you are, where it doesn't get.
No, where I am too.
It's getting really, it's kind of like the trend in the winter time over here. You get that beard on, a little bit of extra protection from the snow and the cold and the what you call it, the wind chill. I never heard tell of a wind chill until I moved over to Canada, but by God, where I am right now, I know what a wind chill is.
You know what wind chill is in Saskatchewan. Yeah, ideally I want to be every 3 or 4 weeks in a barber's chair, getting cleaned up, getting lined up and looked after. Usually it makes it to 6, and by 6 weeks, we're a little too big and bushy for my liking and a little too unmanageable. So we go and see the boys and get lined up and get taken care of.
Well, something that is getting lined up right now is the flyweight division, and let's talk about it, Spencer. I mean, for you, what is the biggest story in the flyweight division? Obviously, we have Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo, who completed the quadrilogy, with Moreno coming out on top. And we've got a big, long list of contenders up and coming. And, you know, quite obviously, I think it's Alexandra Pantoja would probably be the next in line for me. If that's your story, or what else are you kind of looking at and what excites you in the flyweight division right now? Because there's plenty to get excited over.
This is going to probably sound a little vague and a little simplistic, but it's just that overall excitement, right? It feels so as great as the rivalry between Brandon Moreno and Davison Figueiredo was, and as great as all of those fights were, as entertaining as they all were, it's nice to be on to the next chapter. It's nice to have one man at the top. We know who that is, undisputed, Brandon Moreno, and now we're moving on to everything else. This has played out, to me, not quite perfectly, because 2 years is a long time to just have the same two guys fighting for the title, but it's allowed some of these other athletes to get healthy, get back in position. It's allowed people like Matthias Nicolau to rise up the ranks. It's allowed us to see a little more of Amir Albazi. And it's just that overall, you look through the rankings, you look at the landscape of this division right now. And as you said, Pantoja is probably next. He has 2 wins over Brandon Moreno. They were going to fight after Brandon Moreno won the title. That was going to be the fight. Pantoja suffered a knee injury. They went back to Figueiredo. He wins the belt back. So we had to do the fight last weekend. But beyond that, I mean, Kai Kara France still in the mix. Brandon Royval, when he gets healthy, back in the mix. Then we've got Matthias Nicolau. Alex Perez has a big fight coming up against Manel Cape. Albazi is there. Matt Schnell's still around. Muhammad Makayev is coming. Alan Nascimento had a great performance. Tahiru Lembeka. Like, the division is just full of talent, and we're going to get a bunch of really good fights. And flyweights are always entertaining. It's never not fun. Go on, pal.
The other names, just, you know, this is a super stacked division, right? But the other names we need to be mentioning is Tatsuto Taira, right? It's Jeff Molina. I am still
maybe not Jeff Molina.
I don't know if Jeff is going to get
Jeff Molina. Jeff may be out of the mix for a bit.
I think Jeff has some bigger problems now, more
he
so.
He may have some issues with another 3-lettered organization to worry about.
I love it.
The other one, and I'm not putting my hat out there, but just because of what we saw in Cage Warriors, I still think Jake Hadley is a name that has a ton of upside in this division. And look, you go in and you have the debut you have. That's a tough first out. We know that now. I think we knew that going in, but we really know that now. And okay, he went in the second fight, and what happened. He managed to get the dub, but I think there's a lot of upside to him. I think it's a case of settling into the UFC, maybe believing that he's there a little more. But if we look at his performances in Cage Warriors, he was absolutely fantastic. So he's again somebody that I'm really excited for in this division.
Yeah, for me, like it's you know, like Spencer said, it hasn't been perfect, but it's shaping up to be perfect coming into 2023. Like, when we look at this division 5 years ago, there was talks of it being shut down altogether. And it's crazy to think what got it right was a trade-off for one of the greatest fighters that ever lived, for Ben Askren. You know, it's the most
crazy
MMA thing ever, really. You know, that was kind of the spark of the flyweight division. Obviously, Henry Cejudo came in and, you know, put a bit of life into the division and stuff like that as well. But look at Mighty Mouse is not around anymore. Cejudo is not around anymore, and the division doesn't need it, and that's fucking great to see, because I was always a huge fan of the flyweight division. And for me, you know, I think we have a couple of ingredients that is going to make this division probably one of the most talked about in 2023 when it comes to, we've already had, look at the fourth Figueiredo and Moreno fight wasn't what it was cracked up to be. In hindsight, is a great thing, because, you know, when you spend that much time inside the cage with somebody, you know, it kind of results in that level of respect. But it was still decent. But in comparison to their other fights, maybe not so much. But what we have now is a fresh opportunity for some new blood to come in and challenge for the title. And I feel, Harry, we have a champion that wants to fight as well. And I think, you know, when you have all of those ingredients, that has the makings for the division to really kick off into life in 2023 and then further on into 2024 as well.
I really agree. And, you know, actually, on the topic of the rivalry, there's sometimes rivalries, right, where it kind of feels like it holds up the division just a touch. Like, I don't mean this disrespectfully at all to either of the fighters, but I look at Kamaru Usman and Leon Edwards, and I wouldn't really be mad if they didn't do the rematch. I'm not saying Kamaru Usman doesn't deserve the rematch. He absolutely does, for his title reign and especially how the fight went up until the head kick. But I wouldn't mind if I saw Bilal Muhammad in there. I wouldn't mind if I saw, you know, obviously Sean Brady on the rebuild and whatever, but I wouldn't mind if I saw a Khamzat Chimaev in there. I wouldn't mind if I saw the roll of the dice in the new blood. And I think that sort of comes when Usman had, for the time he had the belt, certainly a dominant reign. It's kind of nice to shake that salt shaker up a little bit and see what rises to the top and see how things go. And again, with John Jones and Daniel Cormier, epic fights and all that stuff. And there wasn't a batch of guys underneath that were really chomping at the bit, but it would have been nice to see a little something different, right? And here, I didn't feel that at all. I was absolutely up for every single one of these fights. And there's a ton of guys at flyweight who I'm excited to see challenge. And I thought it was really cool of Brandon Moreno backstage to go to Pantoja immediately after his fight when he had no need. There's nobody would have questioned if he'd have gone up to Pantoja and been like, look, not now, dude. I've literally just won. Let me celebrate with my family, whatever. He went up, he embraced him like a friend. And he said to him, I think you're next, dude. I think you're next. And not only does that show supreme confidence from the champion to be like, come get some, you know, But I also think that's a man that believes in meritocracy. That's a man that believes that Pantoja maybe should have had a title shot before he didn't get it, and he wanted to right that wrong. And so I'm so excited for both flyweight and bantamweight. They are my divisions for the year. I know that we've all talked about that and we've all said similar, but by God, that fight, Pantoja and Moreno, is going to be super flames. I cannot wait for that when it comes.
That is going to be a belter. I'm really looking forward to it. Like, when you're looking at the rest of the division, Spencer, there's an opportunity. Obviously, we've got some matchups. We've got Matt Schell versus Mateus Nicolau, and that's already been matched. But if you're in that matchmaking position, how are you kind of shaping up the rest of the division? And obviously, I think we could easily fall into the trap of another kind of sequence of fights between Moreno and Pantoja, because, obviously Pantoja has wins over Moreno in the past, but if he gets another win again, are you going to deny Brandon Moreno the chance to get back there again? Would you like to see him maybe come and challenge him?
I would 100% deny Brandon Moreno a chance to get back there again.
Yeah.
At least for a couple fights.
Yeah.
At least for a couple fights. Not only from the 0-3 against Pantoja overall, but it's not like you've had this lengthy reign. And so if I'm looking at it, I mean, I know Kai Kara France was supposed to fight in Perth, but he had to pull out with an injury. So we'll see what his health situation is. I mean, Mateus Nicolau is the guy that stands out to me as the, get him in a number one contender fight, whether that is Brandon Royval when he's healthy, whether that is Kai when he's healthy. He's already fought Manel Cape, who has jumped in for Kai against Alex Perez. So against the winner of that, perfectly fine there. I mean, I wouldn't even be mad if he just kind of hung out and was next in line, given everything he's done. But the interesting thing and the really exciting thing to me that ties into all of this excitement is that so many of these guys are still young and in their prime. And it's not a group of 30, 32, 33-year-olds. It's a bunch of guys that are 26 through maybe 31, I think is probably the oldest of any of them. And that's Brandon Moreno and Pantoja, who are the top two. And we've got these young kids that are coming up at different age ranges, like Albazi, like Muhammad Mokaev. Jake Hadley's in there at 26, I believe. Tatsuro Taira is 22, maybe 23 now. He fights next weekend. This is just going to continue to be all kinds of really great fights. And no matter which way you match it up, that's the thing I like the most. No matter which way you pair some of these guys off, who you decide to make it, we're getting fire fights, and they're going to be amazing. And we're going to get movement because for the most part, these guys feel pretty evenly matched. There's not a great big delineation of talent. This isn't tiers that we see in some of these other weight classes. If you wanted to tell me right now that Manel Cape is the best flyweight in the world, I would question it, but I look forward to seeing it put to the test.
Yeah, I would too. And I mean, that's a sign of a good division. There's not too many divisions where you could genuinely say that. And I mean, not people might say that on other divisions, but you can't genuinely say it. You can with the flyweight division, Harry. When you're looking at the top 10, top 15 right now, who are you expecting to be the champion at the end of 2023?
Honestly, Brandon Moreno. We said that the fight, or you just said that the fight between Davison and Brandon wasn't the barn burner that we thought it was going to be. And do you know why? Because Brandon was just that much better.
He's leveled up.
We talked about it immediately on the takeaways, and the guys on the big podcast talked about it too, that one of the biggest things that Brandon did was just circle to his right-hand side, immediately away from the power hand. And then he did such a good job of keeping inside the tram lines. And whenever Davison pressured him, because that immediate takedown early had forced Davison to think twice about pressuring so hard, Brandon had an extra second when he was circling out to that right-hand side. And he was quicker than Davison. He managed to land harder shots, better shots. And he just game planned perfectly and leveled up. And I don't know that Pantoja, with all of the beautiful violence that he brings and all the wildness, Moreno can do that, bro. He can do that. And he's really good at it. And then Manel Cape, like if you want a point fight with Moreno, he's just done that perfectly against Davison Figueiredo. If you want to do a Matt Schnell, let's not see that. But if you want to do a Matt Schnell where he wants to try to meld the both of them, boy, Brandon Moreno can do that as well, right? So like I struggle, and maybe this is a little bit of recency bias, maybe a little bit of championship bias. I'm really excited, and this is what I'm really excited for the next wave of guys. The one that I think will give Brandon Moreno the hardest test is probably Mateus Nicolau. And I just think that it's, at least in this crop of the top 15, just because he's just an awkward guy to fight, right? He's kind of good everywhere. He sits quite low in that stance. He rolls well. He can scramble a bit. He hits hard, and he's tough to get to. So he's the interesting one for me. But the guys I'm really excited about are the guys coming up. Let's see what Makayev looks like in 3 fights. Let's see what Almir Albazi looks like in a couple of fights. Let's see if Tagir Ulanbekov can kick on and find another level. Let's see if Jake Hadley can pull everything together. Let's see what Tatsuto Taira looks like in a couple of fights, right? Like, these are the guys that I think are going to be really exciting. But yeah, I mean, geez.
Oh yeah, I couldn't agree more with you, to be honest. I'm looking at a guy like Alan Nascimento as well, who had a terrific performance in his last couple of fights as well. Do I think has enough to get to the top? I'm not so sure, but I'm excited to find out. Because you're looking at the top 15 now, Spencer, okay? I'm looking at guys like Tim Elliott, like Matt Schnell, unfortunately for Matt Schnell, David Dvorak maybe a little bit, as guys that I could see being replaced inside the top 15 within 2023. I know you did your fighters to watch at the start of the year again, so it might seem like a rehash kind of a question again, but for you, who's getting you most excited out of all the challengers, maybe outside of the top 5?
I mean, Nascimento's certainly a guy that I've planted my flag on. Talked about it going into that fight a couple weeks ago, that he feels to me like a guy that can be a dark horse in this division. A little bit older, really knows who he is, knows what he brings to the table, stays within himself. He's long, comes from a good camp. So, as you said, it may not be that he goes all the way to the top end. He may not make that run to the title fight. I was doing some work earlier today, and he reminds me a little bit of when Dan Hooker went on his run at lightweight, the first run of things. He didn't get all the way to the top, but he got to a point where he was a pain in the ass for everybody from about 6 down. And there was a bunch of fights where you're like, is Dan Hooker going to beat insert fighter here? So is Dan Hooker going to beat Ally Quinta? Yeah, he did. Is Dan Hooker going to beat Paul Felder in a main event? He did. And then he gets Dustin Poirier, and then he gets some of these bigger fights, and it didn't go well, but he's facing the best in the world. I think Nascimento can be similar to that, where if you risk a guy like Makayev against Alan Nascimento this year, he might beat Makayev. If you put him in there with Amir Albazi, he might be able to beat Amir Albazi and just be that veteran test that Harry is now like, oh my God, I want that fight. That's delicious to me, right? But that's the guy he's going to be. And that's the thing that excites me. It's easy to get excited. And believe me, I am excited for some of these prospects, these 22 and 23-year-old young pups that show all the upside in the world. But give me the old guy that's been through a little bit, knows who he is, and walked out there against Carlos Hernandez and was just like, cool, man, watch this, and took his neck and went home.
Yeah, that got me very excited as well. And there's definitely going to be a lot of fighters replaced. There's a lot of guys knocking on the door in the top 15. And the flyweight division is exciting. And, it's going to start to become mainstream. I'm so confident about that in 2023. It's always been, kind of flying under the radar, entertaining fights. But now, the quadrology helped things, put more eyes on the division. But talent. A division needs talent. It's always going to flourish. Harry?
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
You just said there that you think that flyweight's going to come into the mainstream. How much do you think that that's because Brandon Moreno is the champion? Like Brandon Moreno, like Figueiredo is this God of War person, right? He has that persona, he has that personality, he plays it excellently well. But English is obviously a problem. And we know historically in the UFC, if you don't speak English, even if you speak broken English, it goes a long way than if you speak no English, right? So Brandon Moreno has this persona. It's the Funko Pops, it's the Lego, it's the father, it's the whatever. And then on top of that, he speaks fantastic English. He has the Mexican audience, and they've been dying for Brian Ortega or Yair Rodriguez to win a fucking belt so that they can do the thing in the Mexico and the stuff and the thing, right? Brandon Moreno immediately has a mural painted for him after he wins the belt. Like, how much do you think that Brandon Moreno soaking up all that Mexican pride, having the camp in Vegas and being who he is, how much do you think that's going to play a factor into flyweight going mainstream?
Oh, it'll play a huge factor because, you know, Brandon Moreno is who Brandon Moreno is, and that's just an average guy that's really fucking good at fighting. You know what I mean? And he's very relatable. Like, with Davison Figueiredo, phenomenal fighter as well, but there is that language barrier. You know what I mean? And to get that at superstar status, you kind of need to break down those boundaries. And I think Brandon Moreno has broken down all those boundaries from, you know, we've seen him, and I said it in the preview show, we've seen Moreno, and I believe we've seen Figueiredo throughout the 4 contests grow as fighters and grow as personalities as well. And I think, first of all, you need a star in a division to create a division, and Brandon Moreno has the potential to be that. And there's plenty of other guys that have the opportunity to take that away from him as well. But when you're Moreno, you're looking at that US market, you're looking at that Latino market, you're looking at that, you know, buying into that Mexican heritage. It has all the ingredients to blow up for him. All he needs to do now is go on a run. You know what I mean? It can't be win a title shot, lose a title shot, win a title shot, lose it. He needs to go on a run now, and he has to stake his claim at the top of the flyweight division. And if he manages to do that, well, then we're off to the races. And I think he's well on his way of doing that. He's already grown that personality. He's already very likable. And he's an extremely, extremely talented champion. Spencer?
I think it also helps. We've got the rivalry out of the way. We've got the series over with. That brought some attention. That made people, they're doing it for a 4th time. It's the only time in UFC history it's been 4 fights. He's going to be able to pivot into one where the story's already written. The story's already there. There's already a hook. You can show Pantoja's last fight against Alex Perez, where he just ran across the cage, punched him in the face, climbed on his back, and choked him out in like 44 seconds. And you can show them embracing backstage and saying, as Harry said, Brandon Moreno right away, going over and being like, hey man, you're next. Give me some time. Let me figure it out. But you will be next, and we'll get this done. That helps. There's a hook to it. We know all the time. We talk about it from a storytelling and narrative perspective. That's what draws people in more than just guys like us getting up here and saying, this is number 1 and 2 in the division. That doesn't mean as much to some people. But when you say, here's the champion, and here's this guy that beat him twice, not only knocked him out of the Ultimate Fighter when he was, you know, one was ranked number 1, one was seeded number 16. He was a young kid, biggest fight of his career, gets bounced, and then goes on this crazy run where he's in the UFC while the series is still airing. And then Pantoja is the last guy he fights before he gets cut, and they're going to shutter the division. And then Brandon Moreno gets to come back and have that moment where he makes good on his promise of, believe me, trust me, one day, maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, I will be champion. But then he loses the belt and he wins it back. Like, the whole thing is like,
it's crazy.
It's an 8 episode, 10 episode Netflix series, for fuck's sakes.
It almost
like,
is.
Jesus, the whole
crazy.
pattern of it. Like, just let's go. If you don't get pumped for this, seriously, anybody watching this, if you don't get pumped for this, if you are not excited just from me saying that, you might not be a fight fan the way you think you are.
Indeed, indeed. And look, we shall move on up a couple of divisions to the 205-pound division, where Jamal Hill has got in there, got the championship belt, the first Dana White Contender Series champion that existed. When did that start? 2016? 2018? I'm not too sure.
2017.
So it took almost 6 years for it to happen, but Jamal Hill got the job done against Glover Teixeira. Look, at guys, I thought you spoke very well about damage and protecting fighters and, you know, stopping fights, and, you know, Glover was a part of that discussion. I'm not going to go down that avenue again. What I want to do is just give Glover his flowers because he was a unique fighter, one of a kind, and one of the only old school fighters that really had existed in MMA right now. And he's no longer with us. He's retired.
He's alive. He's just no longer fighting.
Yeah, he's no longer with us inside the UFC. Although, fuck, Jamal Hill had a say in that on Saturday night. But we just, Spencer, look, from your early days watching Glover, I mean, he's given us so many memories. And, you know, to go out the way he went out on his sword was so admirable. But his reaction after the fight, just showed the true colors of the type of man, not the type of fighter that Glover is, the type of man that he is, to call to the Brazilian crowd, to give Jamal Hill his dues, to walk out with him. And I think, you know, it wasn't the perfect ending for him, but it was a one that we will remember fondly in comparison to maybe other fighters, it per se, let's say Shogun on the same night, you know.
It's also the one that when you harken back to when he won the title and everybody that was on that broadcast, so John Anik, Daniel Cormier, Paul Felder, why they were so happy, right? Those guys are supposed to remain as impartial as possible and just call the action. Yes, get elevated with excitement for the finish, but you could see a little bit and you could feel a little bit of that. We know these guys. We have relationships with these guys. We have a connection to these guys. It's a reason what we saw on Saturday is the reason why there was that excitement and that like happiness for Glover getting that moment. It's because he is, and we throw this around, or I throw this around a bunch, but he really is truly one of the good guys all time in this sport. Always has time for you, always has a smile, always ready for a laugh. Just understands all the moments all the time, but also has never been too high on himself, has never been the guy that is anything more than who he is, which is a big, strong bastard who likes to get in a fist fight, who loves Mike Tyson, who loved being with Chuck and that crew back in the day and getting his opportunities, enjoys having a cold beer or 6 afterwards, like just having people over for a barbecue, taking his cold tub in the morning, like,
It's
you
awesome.
just love it. Like, and so for him to recognize, and that's the other part of it for me on Saturday, that was special, right? We did a speaker's corner earlier in the year or late last year talking about, we have to find better ways to shepherd these older athletes and these fading athletes out of the octagon. For him to recognize and articulate it properly, that he is too tough for his own good. And he's, look, could I stay in here? Yep. Should I? Nah, I got other things I can do. I'm going to go coach Poatan. That's what I'm going to do. I'm going to coach my team and I'm going to let him come up here and fight my battles for me. Perfect. Perfect. I couldn't have asked for better. It would have been great if he won the title and then walked out with the belt and was like, great, see ya. But I mean, terrific for a guy that's, as I said all week last week, right? He's a year younger than me. So everybody's saying, the old guy, the old guy. And I'm going, yep, the old guy. Super happy to see it.
That's it. Doing one for all the old guys. But
all us old fellas.
Yeah. Unfortunately, Jamal Hill had the task of going in there and kind of stripping away those dreams, Harry. And he did a fantastic job in doing so. We're not going to really focus on that performance in its own right. And don't get me wrong, I am going to talk about Mr. Pereira a little bit later on. But let's talk about maybe a little bit closer down the line. Yuri Prochazka is obviously the next in line. He vacated the title after his shoulder injury. I think the question now is, Harry, is how quickly can he come back? And if he cannot come back as quickly as Jamal Hill would like to fight, what happens in the light heavyweight division?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, firstly, like Spencer said, it was really nice to see Glover with his Zimmer frame, out there, leaving the cage, doing the things. I'd be interested to know what brand of Zimmer frame Spencer has as he's plodding around the house. But I think in the light heavyweight division, right, what's the guys there is obviously you have Blachowicz. What's going to happen with him? We've just had a draw with Magomed Ankalaev. I think the UFC are more likely to book Magomed Ankalaev in a title shot again than they are Jan Blachowicz. obviously younger. There's, potential upside, whatever. But I also think there's Alexander Rakic in and around there when he comes back. I don't really know what they do now. Like, it feels, and again, I know you're going to touch on him and I won't harp on it too much, but it feels like the story is set for Alex Bahia to go up there immediately and just be like, look, motherfucker, you just did that to my friend. I can't be allowing them sorts of hands to be on my friend.
When I saw him throwing that's what it was, a death stare at Jamal Hill after that fight. I texted you straight away, Spencer, and I was like, give me Pereira versus Hill. Give it to me yesterday.
I'm the guy that's always shouting about meritocracy and order and all of these things. Fuck it. Give me the fight. Give me that one next. I don't care if Pereira defends the belt first. I don't care if there's other people in line. Give it to me now.
Something, and Shawnee will listen to this and hopefully he'll have a giggle. Like, when Sean's right, he's fucking right. And I am always right in saying that Sean is right.
Yes.
Right? We've discussed this, but like, the thing he said a while ago, and I actually disagreed with him at the time, but the more that I thought about it, the more I agree, is he said, just give me a good fight and I won't complain. Just give me a great fight and I'll say nothing about it. And fucking what? Jamal Hill versus Alex Bahia is a great fucking fight. And I would absolutely love to see it. Do I think, because let's think about this, right? If we're looking at this from the UFC, from a meritocracy perspective, your number one guy, Yuri Prochazka, potentially a horrendous injury. He says he's ready to come back. Is he? Who knows, right? Magomed Ankalaev and Jan Blachowicz 2 and 3. They've just drawn. There's no flames for that one, right? Alexander Rakic, does he really carry a name that you want to launch into? No, not really. Glover, obviously, he's now gone. Now we're talking Anthony Smith, Nikita Krylov, Johnny Walker types, whatever, right? Like, I don't think any of those, like Johnny Walker, big knockout, whatever, but you're not going to chuck Johnny Walker in there for a title shot either, right? So I think the options, if you're the UFC and you're looking to build, if Jamal Hill goes out there and destroys Alex Bahia, fuck me, boys. That's a storyline and a half, right? And if Alex Bahia wins, that's a storyline and a half. And we know that the UFC are in the business of the house winning, yeah? And the house winning is Alex Bahia and Jamal Hill right now. Obviously, if Prochazka comes back, it would be the dirtiest of the dirty for the UFC to do it. But guess what? The UFC have done it before.
They're definitely going to do that. I don't doubt it.
Well, and I don't think he's going to be back. Like, I don't think he's back in 4 months. I think this is, if he's back, it's towards the end of the year.
100%.
And you'd be hard pressed for Jamal Hill to hang out for 8, 9 months, 10 months, waiting to fight in New York City or the year-end show in December or whatever that may be. Like,
Spencer,
that man's going to want to fight. And so,
can I ask you, Spencer?
Of course, ask me anything.
Yeah, obviously, they have the middleweight title picture right now, and there's been talks of maybe the Izzy rematch or the Robert Whittaker. You're at the risk of kind of ruining, and we're it's crazy how we go against one another, because we want this kind of we want this matriarchy.
We want things to work. We want things to be the progression, and we want people to earn their way. But every so often, it's like, nah, fuck it.
Yeah, just try it through.
And truthfully, that's the way it has to be. Everybody knows it. The thing with wanting the meritocracy for me is when you get to guys like Bilal Muhammad, when you get to where Leon Edwards was, when you get to Tony goddamn Ferguson winning 12 straight and never fighting for the undisputed title, which is going to go down as one of the grand travesties and worst karmic situations, curse you MMA gods, of all time. When you get to a spot like this where there's not really any great, like, can you do the Izzy rematch with Pereira? Sure. Am I interested? Absolutely. Am I more interested than seeing Poatan go up and fight Jamal Hill? I don't think so. I think I'd rather see that one.
Yeah.
Same with Rob Whittaker, you know, right?
You can do the middleweight ones after this fight. Like, I mean,
you could do the middleweight one after. You can have Izzy and Rob each take one just to reset.
Yeah.
Just to build, I mean, you don't even need to really.
No, I wouldn't be
Like-
too upset if they didn't. Like, I mean, Izzy went on a savage run.
Yeah.
He deserves his time off. Whitaker, I think he has done enough. He
I just
obviously
mean from if they want to, right?
they
Like,
want- yeah,
like
yeah.
if the UFC says we're gonna do Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira, and Izzy's like, well, what the fuck do I do? If he wants to take one, let's pick a
Sean
name.
Strickland.
If he wants to go and beat the shit out of Sean Strickland, have at it. He wants to go and, you know, Marvin Vettori seems to be willing to get some anytime.
No, it's too long. You do Roman Dolidze or you do Sean Strickland.
I mean, Dolidze's fighting Marvin Vittori, which is going to be great anyways.
Who cares about that? Cancel that and give him a real fight. You know what I mean?
But if we're look at like even like we're talking about other guys who are working their way, but let's be real about the light heavyweight division. It needs a little bit of time, though, really, doesn't it? It needs
That's
a
the
little
other
bit
piece.
of time.
Yep.
It needs a little bit of time.
Rakic needs to get back and get healthy.
Yeah.
And Goliath and Wojciech probably need one apart from each other. Like I wouldn't do it again. I would just go separate directions.
Yeah, I would. I would. I agree with you. I agree with you there. Like,
I have some thoughts.
Go ahead.
I have some thoughts. Just hear me out. What about if we do Magomed Ankalaev versus Johnny Walker? And what about if we do Jan Blachowicz, Ryan Spann?
You took the words straight out of my mouth. That's exactly who I would match them up if they weren't going to fight one another. If they weren't. And then look at you have Rakic that's kind of out in the cold a little bit. You match him up with Anthony Smith or something like that. Although they did fight before, but I don't know. It was brutal, but I don't know. Maybe you have Alexander Rakic as the backup for the main event or something like that for the title fight. I don't know. It's interesting to see. But would you agree with me? Obviously, you've been fairly high on Ryan Spann and his kind of progression, Spencer as well. But like when you're looking down from number 5 to number 15, it is pretty much slim pickings. Like we need to see some new, fresh, young up-and-comers coming in and trying to stake their claim, but I'm not sure if the talent is there in the UFC right now. Who should we be watching?
Oh, Harry looks ready. I want Harry to pounce. I just want to hear what it is right away.
It's a slight curveball, but the answer is Jelton Almeida.
I mean,
heavyweight, launch out of the fucking octagon and bang him in there, and he destroys 90% of that fucking roster. Like
he's a top 10 fighter right now,
dude.
100%.
He's a top 5 fighter in there. You don't? I mean, absolutely mauls. And
so I do think he can. It's a case of just prove it. I'm not throwing you into the top 5 without. I'm not just giving you a free pass into fighting Jan Blachowicz without you beating somebody on the way up.
How about bring him down to light heavyweight and throw him in there against Anthony Smith or Rakic or something like that. Like I'm not interested in someone like Almeida.
Yeah. He doesn't need to do the go and fight Volkan Ozdemir.
No.
None of that stuff. He doesn't have to fight Dustin Jacoby. But just go and beat one of these dudes. And I absolutely think he beats either of them pretty handily. And then yes, we have another 31-year-old intriguing addition to the division.
Could we do just for me? No punches allowed. Paul Craig, Jelton Almeida. Just for me.
Just grappling.
Just for me.
Just grappling.
They can punch when they're on the ground. No standing punch.
Open hands down. EBI rules.
EBI rules.
Exactly.
Yeah. Combat grappling. I mean, you asked about Ryan Spann. He's obviously a guy that I've been pretty high on. I've been waiting to see if he ever figures it out. Because I've heard throughout his career that that's essentially the thing. If he ever puts it together, if the mental side of things ever comes together for him, watch out. So far, the last 2 fights looked great. We'll see how he does against Nikita Krylov at the end of February. That'll be the next step forward. We'll figure it out from there. Beyond that, I'm interested to continue watching the progression of Carlos Ulberg. I think that's somebody that, is starting to put it together. I'm interested in seeing a little bit more of Tyson Pedro, who's still relatively young, was one of those guys that kind of got caught by being reasonably good early at light heavyweight, which is just a death sentence most of the time. because you win a fight and then you're facing somebody that you have no business fighting, and then you win a fight and then you're facing somebody that you have no business fighting, and you just get overmatched at times. I mean, Jimmy Crute's still young if he can ever get healthy. Who else is in there? I mean,
not too much.
You know,
I think
Zach Pauga is coming off the Ultimate Fighter. He fought at heavyweight on the show, but he's a natural light heavyweight and he's a very good athlete. So he's a like way off the radar, down at the bottom, let's see what he can do kind of guy. But yeah, if you want to give me the Jailton Almeida to light heavyweight, I will take it up. I said it going into last weekend. He fits either spot, and I would much rather him at 205 because we need that guy.
Oh, yeah, like I've been saying it too. I think what the dude is weighing in at like 216. He's like only a pound and a half away. I think there was another
came in at.
I think it was 216
against Shami. 216.
Yeah, 216, which is only a pound and a half. I would looked it up because I said that's surely one of the lightest weighted heavyweights that we've ever seen. But there's one other gentleman, I can't remember his name now, that fought way back that weighed in at 215.5 for a fight. And but it's crazy to think with the light heavyweight, and we'll wrap it up and we'll move on to the heavyweight division after this. It's crazy to think, you know, looking at the light heavyweight division, that we're talking about two guys coming from two different divisions, one from up above and one from down below, to come into the light heavyweight division to kind of spark a bit of life into it. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens. And go on, Harry.
I think that's it. Like, we'll talk about the heavyweight now. And heavyweight actually is as good as it's ever been right now, if not better. Now, we've lost Francis Ngannou. We'll talk about that, obviously. But light heavyweight seems like such a stale division right now. As stale as middleweight, right? And middleweight we've lambasted for a long, long time. But it just feels like there's no movers and no shakers. And you know that in all divisions, there are a couple of guys in those rankings who are there as gatekeepers, right? That's their job. It's a fantastic job to get to. It's an elevated position. Fair play to you if you get there. But there are a couple of those guys, and they're necessary. It feels like 15 to like 5 in light heavyweight are all gatekeepers, and I've got no want, is the honest answer, to watch any of these guys go on a run and pick it up together, whatever. And even Jailton Almeida, he's a guy you can drop in there, and I could see him winning that title with not relative ease, because his striking is, you know, not there against some of the bigger guys, but like, I don't know, like that's a spicy guy that you can just chuck in there, you know? Like,
yeah, 100%. And look, I don't want to spend too much on Francis. It's you know, it's a shame that he's not with the UFC. My personal opinion on it is I respect what he did, but I think he's made a massive mistake in leaving all that money on the table, to be honest, because I don't think the grass is always greener on the other side. It's just, it's not his fault. It's the nature of the business, but he kind of did a good job and still left to get what he wanted and still left it on the table. It's me personally, overall, I'm just massively disappointed that one of the best heavyweights in the world, if not the best in the world right now, will not be competing inside the UFC. Because look, we can talk about other promotions and organizations, but right now, as it stands, and we can argue about other divisions, but right now, as it stands, the best heavyweight talent is in the UFC right now. And we're going to talk about that division. Obviously, John Jones and Cyril Gane are going to be fighting next month. I cannot wait. I cannot wait for John Jones to come back and re-announce himself as one of the greatest fighters that ever existed. My opinion on John Jones has been, and you can put your finger to your mouth, but I'm going to stand firm on this.
No. Has been. I'm just waiting to see if
we're going to see a reemergence.
I'm waiting to see if he reaffirms.
I am going to say this, right? The picture I painted for John Jones was that man came up as a young man in the UFC fighting absolute killers, right? And he mentioned one thing to John Morgan when he spoke with him after the announcement of the heavyweight fight. And he said he had lost the fear in the later stages of his like heavyweight run. The fear that he had when he was taking out Rashad Evans and Rampage and Shogun and Vitor and all those big guys back in the day. Legends. And then I always wondered, coming in against the likes of Reyes, Thiago Santos, and Anthony Smith, like how can you get yourself mentally prepared? And I don't believe he was able to, because the fear wasn't there. And ultimately that did lead to kind of close contests. And ultimately that did lead to speculation around, is he good or not anymore? But what he has is the fear. John Jones has too big of an ego not to come back expecting that he's going to win or wipe the floor with the heavyweight division, because if he had any doubts, I don't think he'd come back, because he doesn't need to. In his mind, he's already the greatest fighter of all time, and he said that himself. He's seen an opportunity here, and he's seen a gateway into the heavyweight division where he can come in and he can maybe fight once or twice and pick up the title and cement that status as one of the greatest fighters of all time. I believe that John Jones has re-sparked that fire in his belly again. I believe John Jones will be coming in there with fear in that heavyweight title shot. And I think for all of those reasons, we are going to see the very best of what John Jones is capable of right now. Will it be the same as it was 10 years ago? No, it won't. But it'll still be good enough to get the job done in the heavyweight division. And I cannot wait for it to happen, because I cannot wait. And I don't go out on a limb too much. I cannot wait to fucking sit back on March 12th or whenever that fight is going on and say, I knew it. I knew it. And everybody doubted John Jones, because greatness is greatness. And we've witnessed greatness for many years, and we've seen a little bit of a fall off. And you can talk about the shit that happened outside the cage, and you can talk about the drug accusations. But what he said himself, if you're trying to define a skill set based on opinion for greatest fighters of all time, what John Jones has done inside the octagon is next to none. Nobody has compared to it, and what he has done, who he has beaten. And I can't wait for him to fucking come back and try it again in the heavyweight division. And I think he beat Cyril relatively easy, to be honest. And I think he would beat Francis Ngannou relatively easy, to be honest. I'm not saying relatively easy as in knockout in round 1 or round 2, but I think he's just going to go in there and dominate. I think he's going to beat Stipe relatively easy, and it'll be interesting to see what happens after that. And I can't remember, mark my words, I never go out on a limb. I'm going out on a limb for my man Johnny Bones Jones. Spencer, I give you the floor. What do you think?
Oh, I was waiting on Powell. Powell had some looks on his face there.
I'm saving the best for last.
I was going to throw to Powell. So I think John Jones is the single greatest talent that I have ever witnessed operate inside the octagon. The things that man is capable of doing, and the level he got to as quickly as he did against the level of competition he fought, is outstanding. It's extraordinary. I also think that, as much as I understand not having the fear and not having the fire, it's a pretty handy thing to be able to say when you go out there and have a couple not great fights. And that's why I'm excited to see him back. I said it throughout last year, right? The thing that intrigues me the most about John Jones coming back is we're going to find out whether it was just, I couldn't get up for facing Anthony Smith and Thiago Santos and Dominic Reyes, because they're not these icons and these legends that I fought. Daniel Cormier, most bitter rivalry that we've seen in the UFC. And we've seen some pretty bitter rivalries, but those two genuinely hate each other. And so I get it. Now you're coming in here with some boys that, you make a mistake and they touch you, you might be going to sleep. And you're the guy that hasn't excuse me, ever been a big power hitter. And so now it's going to be, you got to have all of that technique. You got to have all of that skill, and you've got to have it all at the ready every second of every fight, because your conditioning will be good for sure. You'll still have range. You'll still have length, but those boys need just one to put you to sleep. And that's going to be the real interesting thing. And so look, you're all in. You think he beats Cyril Gane pretty handily. I'm happy to take that bet. I'm happy to take the French side of that wager. I wish Francis Ngannou was still around so I could take that side of that wager as well. I'm like you though. March can't get here quick enough. There's a bunch of fights in March that just good Lord, let's go.
Let's go. Harry, let's go. What are your thoughts, my friend?
I don't even need to buy the pay-per-view, and I want to shell you 70 quid just for that fucking promo. Like, holy fuck. Like, if there is a man to get me to leave my objective perch, it's Ian O'Neill. Like, the thing I love about the fight is I just don't know, right? Like, MMA moves so quick, and I think John Jones has made such a brilliant decision to go down to Henry Cejudo, who's clearly a really, really, really smart mind in the game. I think the only mind I would have preferred, right, for somebody like John Jones is Trevor Whitman, and we know that Whitman only takes a very select amount of fighters and whatever. But I think that, you know, those two men have got it dialed in, and if you want a man to help you game plan when you're already a fighter of supreme fight IQ. And that's something I don't think leaves John Jones, is the fight IQ, is the ring generalship. It's the ability to know what to do in the right spots. I just question, the thing that I question is he was never the biggest light heavyweight, and he's stacked on weight. When the lights are on, and when there is a Cyril Gagné sized muscle-bound form moving towards him, can his body enact the things that his mind want him to do in the right timing, in the right space? Because everything is different. The spatial awareness is different. The fighters you're fighting are larger. And I'm not saying that he's never fucking seen a heavyweight before, because obviously when he was at Jackson's and other places, he was sparring heavyweights all of the time. But I do think that when it is, how long since his last fight? 2 years, 3 years?
3
years.
And I believe in that time he's probably been putting out the feelers and putting out the testers. Like,
right.
Like it's not as if, you know, he fought 6 months ago and now he's making the move up to heavyweight, where we've seen it before. Max Holloway, I think, is the perfect example, who just chose to move up to that lightweight division a little bit too soon without putting on some of that extra bulk or that some of the extra muscle that you need. And you do need it. You're 100% right in doing it. But Harry, you've got to tell me this, because this is the question I have, is John Jones could not have been doing anything else, only frothing at the mouth when he's seen a one-legged Francis Ngannou ragdoll Cyril Gane around that cage. Do you honestly believe that he can't do the same? We're not talking about him going out there and knocking out Cyril Gane in 30 seconds. We're not talking about him absolutely murdering him over the course of 4 rounds and finishing him off. But I mean, a dominant win is taking Cyril Gane down and possibly just wearing him out over time. I go even far as if we're going to see a finish, it maybe even a submission finish. Like, after witnessing what you witnessed Francis Ngannou do, would you not think that John Jones has the same? Now, I have to say about Francis, obviously the power is there and he's unbelievably strong and very little technique. But what Jones may lack in power, he will almost certainly have in technique there. And you well know from your grappling experience that you don't need power or strength. You know, if you have your technique down to a T, you can almost take down anyone at your will if everything lines up.
Mm-hmm. So I think there is nuance to both of those things. Does John Jones look at that and say, Cyril Gagné is susceptible to a takedown? Yes, he does. Does he say to himself, I've got way better setups, I've got way better technique than Mr. Ngannou? Yes, he does. I think the question for me is twofold. The first is, Cyril is well aware that 25% of a shot from Francis has him staring up at the lights in the back of an ambulance, right? So how much is he changing his game, and how much is he tactically aware of the power that's coming, and what does that do to where his hands are, right? Because as we know, generally when it's open cage wrestling and whatever, we're downshifting and down blocking in order to stop the takedown. But if your hands are, you know, essentially a policeman's in front of you and we're doing this to make sure that we're not getting clattered by a Francis Ngannou, our hips are obviously more open. I don't think John Jones, and you've already mentioned this, I don't think John Jones carries the same level of fear in his shots for Cyril Gagné, What the fear is for Cyril Gagné, for John Jones, is I'm a footwork guy. I'm a tactical, cerebral, technical guy. John Jones might be better than me at that. And if that's the case, that's where John Jones gets his takedowns, right?
But it also should be the fear of the takedown as well, which can throw your game off as well. Whereas that, you know, I agree what you're saying. Having and facing the power of Francis, you know, is obviously terrifying. But then, you know, in one little mistake that Jones will capitalize in the takedown, right, and you might hesitate to throw shots. Are we going to see even any leg kicks or any, you know, any kicks at all from Cyril? He likes to use the kick game. He likes to use it to complement his footwork and his distance control. But he might not have that option because Jones will catch it and Jones will trip you and Jones will take you down. And
right,
that's what's intriguing to me. And I believe, yeah, I don't know why. And you know, I do get excitable at times. I do get excitable, but I just fucking feel it this time. I just feel it that, you know, like we've seen Jones do this time and time again. And I believe, like, he believes that he is great. He's not willing to, he's such an egotistical kind of a person that I don't believe he's willing to put himself into a situation where he may come out as the loser. I think he has it in his head that he's carved the perfect path for him to be labeled the greatest fighter of all time and to do so as a quote unquote undefeated fighter. Like, you know, you want to count that Matt Hamill loss, whatever, but like technically he's been undefeated inside the octagon.
Sure. The second question I have is for Cyril Gane. And that's like, he's effectively a heavyweight, a spring chicken, right? A baby in that division. Now we can talk about whether the camp he's at is the best camp for his progression. And there's, you know, arguments to and for that. But if you've got somebody like Imavov in your stable, in your room, and you're fearful, you know, the takedown against Francis is not super expected, right? We know what his A game is. His A game is stand in front, battering ram, do fist things, people die. Grand. With John Jones, you have to prepare for everything. And I think the stand-up, pure stand-up, is actually something Cyril will be far more comfortable with because it's point fighting, right? Jones, as you've already talked about, isn't a big hitter. He's a very accurate, very smart, very technical striker, but he's not a massive hitter. So for Cyril, he's going to be way, way, way happier with that sort of conundrum. But it's the grappling, it's the footwork, it's the fight IQ, it's the timing, it's the everything else. And if you've got somebody like Imavov and you know that this fight is rumored and or coming, surely for Cyril, you're like, right, we're going to stand here, you're going to point fight, and you're going to shoot on me at every single footwork mistake that I make. And my question is, as a young fighter who's still molding himself, how quick a progression can he make? Because we don't know. We know that John Jones was great. We know that there is potential for him to be great again. We don't know if he is great, though. But what we do know is that it's way harder for a fighter of a John Jones type who has been through the ringer, been through the training camps, molded himself into the fighter he is, to make vast changes to his game. But we know that for Cyril Gagné, who has got showed up a little in that Francis Ngannou, Shawnee would use the word exposed, right? That there is vast potential to make big leaps there. And I think that's actually the thing that I'm most excited about in this fight is Cyril came off the Francis Ngannou fight. He has the experience. He has the learning experience. He takes the things. He has the things to work on. And now he's got this absolute monolith of the sport. And we don't know whether that monolith is like a mini-lith or not. We've just got no idea. And to me, the excitement is John Jones is daring to be great again. And if he goes out there and he ragdolls Cyril Gane and he submits him or even just dominates him for 5 rounds, my good googly moogly, are we going to have a lot of fun with John Jones at heavyweight? But if Cyril goes out there, and again, this is the house wins, right? If Cyril goes out and beats John Jones, stops John Jones, puts him away, dominates him for 5 rounds, the UFC are like, he's just beaten the greatest of all time.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's a dream. It's a dream scenario. It's funny. It's funny how the talk on what was supposed to be the heavyweight division has just circulated around one fight, but it's Spencer. It's just too big of a fight not to talk about and not to concentrate on. I mean, it's something that we were maybe at a period of time in mixed martial arts, and especially in the UFC, where we were spoiled around these kind of fights, and they've been few and far between over the last couple of years. But this is a blockbuster fight. This is a super fight. This is the story, like Harry so excellently kind of stated, is paved in stone. And you know what? The stories that are going to come out after the fact, you know, whether it's John Jones's way or Cyril's way, it's just going to be fascinating to see, isn't it?
It absolutely is. And part of the reason I think it has become the standalone sort of fight in this division is because in a way, we've lost one of the other principles that we would talk about in Francis Ngannou. The fourth member of this group, if there would be a fourth member, Stipe Miocic, still isn't doing anything. He tweeted out, "Great, I got the winner in the summer." Sure. Maybe. I don't know. And then we don't know what's coming behind it, right? So we don't know whether we're going to get Sergey Pavlovich and Curtis Blades. We don't know when Tom Aspinall is coming back. We don't know when some of these other fights that can come together will come together. And so this becomes, as it deserves to be, both as it deserves to be and as it stands right now on the schedule, it's the only heavyweight fight. And combat sports throughout history will tell you, as great as the lighter weight classes can be, things get really fucking exciting when there's something cool happening in the heavyweight division. And this is about as interesting as you can get. Like John Jones, Francis Ngannou, slightly more interesting.
That for me would definitely be number one.
I know for Shawnee, this was his number one. For me, it was Ngannou, just because
it's the
power of that man and the development of that. For me, it's also just the development of him. Like the fact that he's now gone from the UFC after we just saw, hey, wait a minute, this dude's learning offensive wrestling. What's he going to pick up in the next year? What's he going to pick up in the next 18 months, 24 months to go with that power?
Lads, it's probably not beyond the realms of possibility that we see Francis Ngannou back in the UFC maybe next year. I'm not super confident of it, to be honest. But I mean, if you're Jones here, the roadmap for him, it's got to be go out there, do the business against Cyril, go out there and beat Stipe in the summer, and then you're calling Francis Ngannou all hell on earth to try and get him back.
Neither of these guys is licking their lips. With all due respect to Stipe Miocic, who I like, who I've had a great relationship with throughout his career, who I respect as an athlete and as a fighter and everything that he's done. Each of these dudes has got to be licking their chops to get a hold of a 42-year-old that hasn't fought in 2+ years.
Stipe is the least intriguing matchup for me at this stage now, because
I think both of them smash him.
Oh, absolutely. And that's why John Jones wanted the Stipe fight first, to be honest, because I think
go out and make a statement and say, well, I just beat the greatest heavyweight in UFC history. Now give me whoever's next.
Exactly. And I don't know. I can't foresee Jones fighting more than 3 or 4 times in the heavyweight division. It'll be interesting to see what happens after the summertime. If he's planning on March, if he's planning on July again, he's going to want maybe to go out in December. I don't know whether it happens, but
I would really like him to just come back, win a couple fights, and then see if DC wants to come back. Like John Jones being the asshole that he is, you 100%. Here's the thing. Daniel Cormier will be calling those fights. If John Jones goes out there and smashes Cyril Gane, and then goes out there and smashes Stipe Miocic, and his greatest rival is sitting right there having to talk about this man as arguably the greatest fighter of all time and has no choice but to give the man his due. If you don't think that motherfucker is going to get on a microphone and start talking some shit at Daniel Cormier, sitting there and be like, you want to come and get some of this, old man? You want to lose some of that extra weight and come get some, big fella?
I think that's the perfect way to end this show. That would be sensational. And That's it. No preview show this week, but a great conversation. Look, anytime that there's no preview show, I think we will do something like this. Maybe we'll look at different divisions again the next time. It's nice to get back with you lads again, even on the week off. I hope everybody enjoys the weekend free of UFC action. I hope everybody is looking forward to the preview show. We're back for one event and then another pay-per-view. So we're getting right into the thick of it. We've got that huge fight coming up between Alex Volkanovski and Islam Makhachev. That's another one I can't wait for. We'll be giving you plenty of action, reaction, breakdown of that fight on the preview show. We'll be with you every Thursday for the next 9 weeks now. On top of this, so I hope you enjoyed what you've seen today. If you have any thoughts, leave them in the comments. Head over to Twitter and follow Harry Powell at BJJ_Harry Powell, at Spencer Kite. Severe Spotlight each and every Monday. You have Monday off this week, Harry. You have Monday off this week, perhaps, unless you're going to go searching around the wicked world of mixed martial arts, like the degenerate that you are, and the degenerate that we all are, looking for more fights, because we complain, oh, there's too much UFC, and then when there's no UFC on, we're like, oh, I wish there was UFC on. But that's what the life of a mixed martial arts degenerate. We shall leave you there, folks. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, head on over to the SevereMMA Patreon account up on the top right above Harry. Sign up there. Speaker's Corner is over there. Check out Spencer's work. A question with 10 questions. 10 questions. I have 1 question. I have 10.
1 question for every fight. 10 things I like.
10 things I like and 1 question for every fight. But a conversation with Dan Ige is up this week. Go over and check that out. I have not listened to it yet, but I am going to, and I can tell you already it's going to be fantastic, because all the conversations with are fantastic, to be honest. And check out the Severe Takeaways each Tuesday after every event. The lads will be on to break down all of the fights inside the UFC in great detail, and it's always an enjoyable listen. Bless you all. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back next Thursday
as well. You fucks.
Oh yeah,
listen to the old triangle. Go check out Ian's interviews that he's been doing. The one with Danny McCormick is up now and is terrific. Go. He doesn't promote himself. He promotes us. We love him. We appreciate him. But go check out his work and the work of the rest of the lads as well. Owl
Triangle on the SevereMMA YouTube. We appreciate the support. Thank you all. We'll see you again next week. Goodbye.